Welcome to a new episode of the Rectified Podcast. My guest today is Katrina Owens, founder of Knockout Marketing Directive Agency. Katrina, you're known for teaching entrepreneurs how to create famous personal brands using public relations. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Sandy. I'm so excited to chat with you today.
Me too. Let's start by how this whole thing happened. I ran an Instagram poll and I asked the followers what kind of subject do you want me to discuss on the podcast, and everybody was like, personal branding, personal branding, personal branding. So, having said that, it just happened that I was on Threads and I'm like, oh, I think I was talking about coaching and how like what I had one coaching episode and it was like very successful. And we just talked on Threads, and here you are. and
Yes, the
the
power of
wonders of
threads.
exactly the power of social media, and more specifically Threads. So tell us a little bit about yourself, your agency, what exactly you do.
Yeah, so I started Knockout about 2 years ago after I left a job in the real estate industry. I was working in real estate development out here in Vancouver. So we've been around for 2 years and we've kind of split off into two different streams. So I work with a lot of personal brands on public relations coaching, teaching entrepreneurs how to use PR in their business. And then, second to that, I also have my agency, which provides more done for you services. We still work with a lot of personal brands, or what I like to call founder focus brands. So, that might
Mhm,
be your direct to consumer, your product based businesses where the founder still wants to have a more public facing persona, whether that's an extension of the D2C brand or a standalone brand on its own. Both are important.
mhm, mhm.
So that's what we do. We just deal with people, personal brands on on all fronts.
Yeah. I love the term founder focused brands. I really love it. This matches very well with this new trend of like founder influencers who build a brand, but then they become like so famous through, I don't know, TikTok or Instagram or whatever platform they're using. And then they become influencers, but they start also creating so many brands back to back because things are happening for them. So tell me a little bit more about this type of founder and direct to consumer founder.
Yeah, it's actually founder focused kind of came into play when I was building out my own agency brand because I never thought I would have a personal brand. Did not
Yeah.
think that would be me. But I realized it became a necessary evil. At the time, it was a necessary evil. Now I really love it
Mhm.
of building a business. And especially for me as a service provider, it became this thing that I had to do in order to sell my services. So once I realized the power of a personal brand and how it allowed me to open up different revenue streams in my business. So, having my agency as a standalone, it didn't need to be the agency is me. It can be Katrina and the agency, and then all the other things that I do. So that's when I
Yeah.
really wanted to show other founders the power of this. And as someone who used to work or still works with, but now so many of the brands are founders and founder focus, I used to focus so much more on just product based businesses or direct to consumer brands. And I realized that marketing those brands started to become a lot more challenging because in any industry, whether it's candles or women's health products or alcohol, whatever category you're in, you really feel that pressure of being in a saturated industry, and
Mhm.
it's no longer just good enough to post fun brand images or do an influencer campaign, because consumers want to have a more connected a relationship with the founder and understand the values and the story behind the brand. And so that's when I really made the shift from, okay, we no longer do just direct to consumer PR or outreach for product based businesses. For us, the founder has to be a piece of the story because that's when I think
Yeah.
PR starts to become so much more beneficial.
Mhm.
So, any founder that approaches me, even if they don't want to have a personal brand, I start to encourage them to at least consider it because I think it opens up so many doors as well.
Yeah, especially for small businesses. People buy from people. We say it over and over again. And that's why they're going to buy from you and not from the big corporation who might sell it the same product cheaper or deliver it faster or
Mhm.
whatever it is. It's they're going to buy from you because of the story you're telling about yourself and your brand and why you created it. Katrina, tell us a little bit more, what's personal branding? We see a lot of people just saying, "Oh, I'm building my personal brand," and it's just because they're doing some stuff on TikTok. But that's not what it's all about. So tell us a little bit more about it.
Totally. So that's so funny because I had a long corporate marketing career before starting my business. So I really approach personal branding the same way I would approach doing a high level corporate marketing strategy. So when you're building your personal brand, you are still, identifying your ideal client profile. You are still putting together, the market demographics and figuring out like where you stand amongst your competitors. You're still doing all of these more technical marketing things while using the qualities of you as a person to really build that brand platform.
Mhm.
So when I built out my own personal brand, this is where I got a bit uncomfortable in the early stages because you start to think about yourself as a bit of a commodity. And that's when
Mhm.
people like to say, well, I don't like the idea of selling myself. And
Yeah.
honestly, there are enough quotes out there these days where people are like, well, you have a personal brand, whether you like it or not. So you might as well
Yeah.
control the narrative. And I totally agree with that. So to me, personal branding is an opportunity to create a profitable business using yourself. And I think this is so important for direct to consumer brands because if our company grows or when our company grows in revenue or in size, and we want to bring on investors or we want to sell it off, we still need to have a piece of us that we can continue to grow other businesses. Or maybe we
Yeah.
start to do paid speaking engagements or partnerships. So that's why I encourage founders to think about adding in that personal brand strategy while they're mapping out like their product based business, because it really allows you to still, grow other businesses even when this initial startup or whatever you're currently working on is no longer part of you. And if I've actually spoken to founders before who have expressed that once they have sold a business or sold off part of their business, they felt lost or like
Yeah.
something's missing. And I'm like, this is how you make sure that you don't have that lost feeling. You're setting
Mhm.
yourself up for long term success and really diversifying your success, which I think is really cool.
Yeah. I've seen so many, well, not I've seen, but I've worked with some brand founders. Their brands are bigger now, whether it's service or product, doesn't matter. But their brands are bigger now. Like they reached a very good place in their business. However, they didn't do it while building their personal brand. And they want to do it, but they're like, oh, I don't have time and I can't do this. Oh, I'm so focused. I'm the CEO and I don't have time and this and that. So what can they do to find the time to actually invest in this? Even if you're a small brand, you still say, oh, I don't have time because I'm doing everything by myself. So, what can we do there?
Yeah, I think it's starting to take it seriously and treat it like, its own business. So, I
Mm,
once had a coach tell me that, like, as a service-based business, every offer or service that I have is a standalone product in itself. It's its own there's a
mhm,
business strategy that goes along with each individual thing. And so I think when we think about businesses and all the businesses that we have, how do we make time for all of these different things while we treat them like they are real businesses already? Our personal brands can be profitable, but we have to put time and energy towards that. And one of the things that I see founders kind of skip is, setting up a personal brand, but not having a website or not posting consistently on social media. And we think like, oh, I don't need a personal brand website. There's an about page on my products website that tells people a little bit about me.
mhm,
But that's
mhm.
not the same thing. If you want to start, securing speaking opportunities or maybe have the opportunity to invest in other businesses, you need to start really carving out your area of expertise within your industry. So my suggestion is, because I'm a big time blocking girl, is put it in the calendar. One of my good friends, she makes Wednesdays her personal brand day. And on Wednesdays,
Mhm.
that's when she's recording podcasts or creating social media content. And, apart from that, she has a very busy agency, but she makes the time to treat her personal brand like it's own business.
Yeah, its own product category,
Yes,
let's say.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah. Speaking of personal brand websites, I have my name. I bought my name as a domain years ago and I still never used it. But I kind of know that the day will come where I'm going to
Mhm.
use this domain. It's my name. I don't want anyone to take it. I don't know if anyone else has it in the world, but still.
That's
But
smart.
still. Speaking of that, um, there's a lot of there's a mix between personal branding and social media and PR and podcasting and all of these things that are that we see around us. What do you think is the best strategy to start building, like the first step to start building your personal brand?
Yeah, I think the first step is to don't overthink it. So, a lot of the time, we don't even know what we want to talk about or position ourselves on until we start creating content
Hmm.
and like trying different things. So, a great example of this is when I started my agency, I set up an Instagram account for the agency and I looked at what everybody else was doing. My competitors were doing, what they were posting, and I tried to mimic that.
Yeah.
And it was really hard to create content. I didn't find that I was seeing a lot of growth. I didn't find that my content was very engaging. And once I decided, okay, scratch that. I'm just going to post whatever I as a person want. People seem to like to hear from me. So I'm going to get away from like trying to position myself as an agency online and bring me as the founder to the front of it. That's when I realized that there were so many more opportunities to grow my personal brand online. So I
Hmm.
only learned that through trying. So I think, the first step is to just start. If
Yeah.
you've never spoken on a podcast before, it's hard to know exactly what you would talk about on a podcast. So this is why I offer a couple different programs where people can start to learn what PR looks like for their business. Because if you want to get into podcasting, there are some like newer podcasts or podcast swaps that you can start to do where maybe the stakes aren't as high and
Yeah.
maybe you can start to test out some of your messaging and there's a bit more a bit more space for you to experiment with what you do like to talk about. Now,
Hmm.
at this point in my career, I've spoken on over 15 podcasts. And, I look back on the very first one I ever did and I'm like, I don't talk
Yeah.
about any of that stuff anymore. I just talk about
Yeah.
what feels more authentic to me. But it's only by doing, by just
Hmm.
trying that I
Exactly.
learned those things. So we don't need to like feel like we have to have it all figured out before we start. I think we just need to start because at the end of the
Yeah.
day, our personal brand is us. So
Yeah.
while there is some like strategic figuring out to do, the best
Hmm.
way to do it is just to put yourself out there and see what people respond to and what feels authentic to you.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. What's the relationship between personal branding and PR?
Yeah, this is my favorite thing to talk about because oftentimes, as entrepreneurs, as founders, especially if we're new in our business or maybe we're an early day startup, we think that we're not ready for PR. But that's just
Hmm.
because we think PR is like Samantha Jones on Sex in the City or like Times Square billboards. And we think we're so far away from that. But
Yeah.
PR is so much more than that. It's going on podcasts. It's maybe getting quoted or featured in an article. It's speaking at events or even just attending events in the early days of your business. So, understanding that PR is so many things and so many of those things are accessible to you right now helps you expand your personal brand and really grow it. So, we think that we need to have our personal brand reach a certain level before we start using PR. But I actually believe that we start incorporating PR as soon as we have this personal brand kind of figured out.
Mhm.
And then we grow using public relations, because the more that you are featured in articles or seen and heard speaking on podcasts or even on TV, the faster your
Yeah.
brand is going to grow. So we use it
Mhm.
as a catalyst, not as this thing that we'll do one day when we're ready.
Yeah. And how local is PR? You're talking about TV, you're talking about articles, so it's more look is it more location based, or it can be like as wild or global
Can
as
be as
it can be?
wild or as global as you want. I actually love talking about building an international personal brand, because that's something that feels like really big and dreamy. I so the way I look at personal branding and PR, it's become a local celebrity, or famous in your own backyard first, because that's going to be the easiest way to build up credibility and authority. So if you're someone who is frequently engaging in like local events, and maybe you start speaking at local events, having that content that positions you as a speaker or an authority in your space allows you to start pitching yourself to bigger events. And then you're
Mhm.
seen as a more widespread, credible source expert in your industry. So it's kind of like dominoes. It's like start
Yeah.
small, start by trying to build your network as much as you can. I love in person, because it's like
Yeah.
it's what we like. It's so easy, but we think
I know. Yeah.
we think
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
not, but it's actually the easiest way to grow our personal brand, because people respond to us so much better in person and remember us so
Mhm.
much more. So
Yeah.
starting off in your local community, maybe it is your local media, local newspapers, or even, I have a couple clients that are frequently on TV as subject matter experts. So it's starting there, but knowing that
Mhm.
you can build this international personal brand. But you do really need that brand authority that you create in your own community first, because that's going to be the easiest way to start to get
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Makes sense. Um, Can you give us like a little bit like a step by step if I'm new and I want to do like a PR strategy for myself or for my brand, like a step by step, a 2 minute coaching
Yes.
session for the entrepreneurs who are listening to us?
Love it. So there's like a personal brand framework that you want to have in place before you start really executing on PR. So there's a couple things you want to know from a personal brand perspective so you can really effectively pitch yourself. So
Mm,
you want to make sure you understand your unique position. So, what is the thing that you talk about in a way that nobody else is talking about? So,
yeah.
as a founder of, say, a product based business, you really want to figure out, okay, how can I talk about my industry or the experience that I've had selling a product or being in a D2C brand? How can I use that to talk about things that no one else is talking about yet? So, if I'm
Mm,
in, say, the health and wellness industry, what have I noticed and what makes my opinions different? And then
yeah.
take a look at your competitors in the industry. So a lot of the times we think competitors are the people that are like, doing things on a much different level than we are. So
Mhm.
don't look to like the industry leaders. So, for lack of a better example, if you're in the health and wellness space, don't look to like the Gwyneth Paltrow's of the world as your
Yeah.
competitors. Okay. So look at the people that are along like the same lines of you in terms of stage of business, stage of revenue, product categories. Look at who those founders are and see what they're talking about. Do they even
Mhm.
have a personal brand set up yet? Are they capitalizing on that kind of strategy yet? If not, amazing opportunity. And if they are, take a look at the type of content that they're sharing so that you can start to say something different than them. You might even disagree with them, which is even better.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then thirdly, you need to figure out your ideal client profile. So this is
Mhm.
not the ideal client for your product. It's the ideal client for you as a founder. So is that an investor, or is that event coordinators? So you can become a speaker. And maybe it is as a secondary audience, that user of your product, but you want that user to have a connection to you. They're not necessarily buying you as a personal brand. So, really important to
Mhm.
keep in mind. So, do
Yeah.
those three pieces of homework and then figure out where you can start to reach that audience. So, if it's investors, maybe there are some podcasts or industry publications that you can start to reach out to and pitch your unique position and your story on. If it is event coordinators, okay, what are some local events where you can gain some experience talking about the unique position or things you want
Mhm.
to capitalize on or speak about? And then thirdly, the most important thing is start to create social media content on that unique position and share those opinions. We cannot effectively do PR for our personal brand without social media content.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
we don't have an online presence, then there isn't a place for us to build brand authority or brand awareness. So
Mhm.
the little quote I like to always say in this case is, you can't expect anyone else to share your story if you're not sharing it yourself first.
Yeah.
Because why should someone else care if you're not taking the time to communicate it and put it out to the world? So that would be my little like homework. So
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah.
do some of those brand building pieces first and then figure out the
Mhm.
best way to get your message out there.
Yeah. How im- well, not how important, but like how can I mix what I'm living or my life or what I'm going through with the content that I'm posting or that I'm creating. For example, when you said health and wellness, it just came to my mind. It's been like four weeks already that I just went on a crazy health and wellness journey. I was not okay, having brain fog and all of that. I did all my research, started,
Yeah.
doing all the healthy stuff that we're supposed to do. And all of a sudden, I developed this curiosity about all those products that are all those companies that are offering health and wellness
Mm.
products, whether it's a cold plunge or whether it's
Yeah.
like some sort of protein, whatever, all of those brands that exist here. And I found myself reaching out to these people, and they're going to be guests on the podcast. You're going to see them soon.
Yes.
So it's like my journey is mixed with my guests on the podcast, and I'm pretty sure we're going to talk about some health stuff, which
Mm.
they made them create these products. So it just like where I am now in my life is mixed a little bit with what I'm doing on the podcast. How much do you advise people to do this in order to maybe keep things real, keep things authentic, or so that you're able to produce more and more content?
Yeah, I think that there's a line. So I think sometimes we see personal brands or some of these larger influencers with personal brands maybe like post themselves crying or going
Oh,
on
yeah.
rants, and I think at that point we've gone too far. I
Yeah.
think it's I mean, particularly for this audience, but this is what I advise everyone to do is at the end of the day, we're business professionals. So, regardless
Mhm.
of the fact that maybe some of us have personal brands that are a bit more fun or approachable, we still want to ensure that we're making smart choices that keep our businesses profitable, that wouldn't have like our clients or investors or customers questioning some of our choices. But with that being said, I think those personal touch points are important, but it's how we talk about them or communicate them. I recently went through a bit of a challenging time in my business, and I wasn't sure how to share it. And I didn't think that I was going to share it for a long time.
Mhm. Mhm.
But I had someone say, like, there's probably other people out there that can relate to that. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I am a PR professional, so I felt like I was able to write it or create the narrative in a way where I was,
Mhm.
not giving everything away, but still just kinda
Exactly.
speaking to the overarching challenges. And I mean, I received like an outpouring of support on those posts, which I think is so great. But for me, it
Mhm.
was okay. I want to make sure my audience can still relate to me and know that I am also a real person running
Yeah.
this business, which I think sometimes we forget. So I think there's definitely a balance, but I do think the personal anecdotes are important. So
Mm.
every brand and founder that I work with, I do suggest on social media a couple times a month, just try to drop in maybe a more personal story, and how do you relate that back to the work that you do?
Yeah.
Because for me, I really don't see a point in sharing something, especially from a business perspective, if you can't connect it back to your business, even if it is personal. And this
Yeah.
might not be like the formula every single time, but for myself and my clients, a lot of the time it's okay, so here was the problem you went through. What made that problem easier? Or how did you solve that problem using some of the
Mhm.
tools from your industry or your business?
Yeah.
Because that's how you kind
Yeah.
of bring it back to the business, which is an
Mhm.
important part of personal branding
Yeah.
that sometimes we forget about.
Exactly. But I mean, not to overdo it, because when I go on LinkedIn, is like every single time a founder went to get a cup of coffee, he learned something. And I'm like, no, you didn't learn a lesson every single day. You
Well,
know what I mean?
totally, and it's so funny because we see through that now,
Yeah,
and it's like there
exactly.
needs to be we if
Yeah,
that's what we're doing, we need to change our messaging because the last thing we want are people doubting the stories. So,
exactly. The
that's an
freak
important thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, the frequency is very important.
Yeah.
Like nobody learns a lesson every day. You learn a lesson from time to time, and yes, it applies to like your you're doing, or something you learned from work applies to real life, etc., or vice versa. Yes, but it's really not every single day.
No, exactly, and honestly, like, I think content-wise, like, social media content-wise, we need to experiment with different formulas. So we see on
Mhm.
LinkedIn, there's a formula in the way a lot of these posts are written,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I think it's a bit outdated now, and I think that's
yeah.
what makes people doubt and see through some of
So
this.
so true. Yeah, there's a lot of memes about that.
Yes, exactly, and I think if it's a meme, then we gotta, like, get away from it. It's funny because
Exactly.
LinkedIn scares me a little bit. I've started to post there more and more for my personal
Mhm.
brand, but it's interesting experimenting with how to share stories over there. I
Yeah.
mean, I do it for a lot of my clients, and, like, it's easy, when you're an agency sharing stories on behalf of someone else. It's much harder
Mhm.
when you have to do it for yourself.
Exactly, exactly. But as you said, for example, if you're seeking, for example, investors,
Mhm.
LinkedIn can be the place for you. But
Yes.
if you want to be, I don't know, something else, it may not be the right place for you. So we have to also
Exactly.
choose the platform that works for
Yeah,
us.
exactly. Understanding that's why that ideal client profile is so important because we need to
Mhm.
understand where are we reaching this person. And that's actually a part that a lot of us skip. We think
Yeah.
we should just use the platform that like we want to, but that's not really the case.
Exactly, exactly. Speaking of social media, there's a lot of emphasis on the number of followers, oh, she has 1 million followers, or oh, it's nothing, she only has like 1,000 followers. How important is that in this whole equation?
I think we need to give ourselves some grace on the followers front. And I think now, similar to this conversation we've just had on LinkedIn, I think a lot of us
Mhm.
actually now see through that high
Yeah,
number of followers, knowing that someone could have obtained those followers in many different ways. So,
yeah.
one thing that I love to do is when I do see someone that has like a large number, is you kind of go through their feed and you look at, okay, are they receiving engagement on their posts? What does that engagement look like? Like, does it feel authentic from real people or not?
Mhm.
So you can kind of assess. Um,
Yeah,
so when it comes to social media following, the number is important depending on what kind of goal you have in mind, especially from a PR perspective. So if you want to start getting on larger podcasts or speaking at larger events, you do need a larger audience as social proof to be able to secure those larger opportunities. That's unfortunately just the way that it is, but
yeah.
that should also motivate you to build that audience. I mean, I have about 1,600 followers now on Instagram, and I've grown that in just a year and a half. So to me, I'm like, okay, 1,600 feels like a lot right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
And it's like that, growing a following also comes with a realization where you're like, wow, there are all these people out there looking at what I'm putting out, which is a bit of a different feeling. So
Yeah.
for me, what I love about my following is that they are super engaged. They buy from me, which is very, very
Mhm.
important because you could have thousands, tens of
Yeah.
thousands of followers and never receive a single purchase from them. So I think we're more and more savvy on the follower count now. And I think it is something to continuously work towards. But
Mhm.
I would never encourage that someone goes out and buys those followers because, as much as the
Yeah.
follower count can be important, people can also tell. So, like, you could be pitching to large conferences and sharing that I have 10,000 or 20,000 followers. I'd love to speak at your event. But if the event coordinator goes to your page and is like, well, there's no comments, no engagement. I don't think any of these people would buy tickets to see you
Yeah.
speak. Well, that's an
Yeah,
entirely
yeah.
different problem now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's important, but let's not go about it in a way that is, unethical.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. Just like on LinkedIn, like people are seeing through all of these
Yes.
tactics and n- like companies and brands are no longer just blindly following the follower number. They're looking deeper. They're digging deeper in every
Yeah.
person's account and seeing, oh, do you have comments? Do you have I don't know how many views do you have? You have a million view on a reel, yes, but like two comments, it means
Mhm.
nothing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Things like that. So yeah, people are seeing through that. Um, what is so does your social media presence and number of followers and everything we just talked about also linked to traditional media? Let's say I want to be on a TV show, or I want to be, I don't know, in some morning show for maybe
Yeah.
product placement or something. Are these also related, or traditional media still goes with it like in the traditional way?
It depends. It depends if it's a slow news day. It depends how great the story is. So, for example, I mean, I've done PR outreach for businesses who have zero social media presence and have just kind of
Mhm.
started their business. But because there's an amazing story attached to that, we've been able to successfully pitch to local media because local media want to share the stories of the people in their community. That being said, that might not be the case every single time.
Mm.
Especially when you start to think like we're coming up to the holiday season, right? Everybody wants a TV placement for like
Yeah.
the gift guide segments and that kind of thing. Those are highly coveted segments and very, very competitive. And, if I'm a host and I'm looking through all of the options of things to talk about, I'm going to talk about the thing that does have a more polished social media presence that already looks like people are purchasing to make
Yeah.
the segment worth the while. So it really depends on seasonality, time of year, what the story is. But I really encourage any type of business to grow that social media presence, experiment using PR because you're never going to know if it's going to work or not if you don't try.
Mhm.
Because I have seen it work for small businesses that are just like, getting things going. There is opportunity there, but
Yeah.
yeah, timing really is everything for a lot of those
Mhm.
incidences.
Yeah. And does the same thing apply for speaking engagement? Does the followers number count, or your social media presence? I don't know, podcast, being a guest on podcast, everything. Does it count to getting like speaking engagements and being more known for your product and building your personal brand?
100%. When it comes to like in-person events and speaking at them, especially when it's a larger audience, having that existing social proof that you have an audience that's tuned into what you're saying already and like, from a credibility standpoint, having a large audience, it's so important. Um, part of my business, we work with a lot of keynote speakers, and a big part of that strategy is growing the social media following, because
Mhm.
if you want to speak at higher profile events, if you want to get paid for speaking, then that follower count really, really does matter. Now, if
Mhm.
you want to start speaking at events and you haven't done it before, this isn't to say that there's no opportunities available to you. I
Yeah.
suggest that those people start with like their local chamber of commerce or, some of the smaller events in their community where they can form an authentic relationship with the
Mhm.
event coordinator and see if there's an opportunity there. Out here in Vancouver, there are many, many smaller events where you have the opportunity to speak if you just connect with the right people and express your interest. Yeah, those audiences aren't like
Mhm.
of 200 people, it could be more like 20, but you have to start somewhere. And if you
Yeah.
don't do the smaller events first and bring those people into your network and have them follow you, you're never going to get to the 200-person room.
Mhm.
So it's all baby steps.
Yeah. I mean, 20 is a lot of people
Yeah,
if you've never
exactly.
done that.
Yes, yeah, and, like, let's not discount the fact that public speaking is a whole beast on its own, and I think small business owners or new business owners are often unprepared for how much work goes into a speaking
Yeah.
engagement. I'm preparing for one that I have this week, and I spent 6 hours over the weekend creating a refreshed presentation and practicing it. And I've been doing this for like a year now. I've done a
Yeah.
ton of different engagements, but I wanted to switch up some of the content. I wanted to experiment with a new intro. So trying some new things, but
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
takes still takes so much time and practice to get it right. So, yeah, it's like if you want to start speaking on stages, you have to also be prepared for a whole new project.
I know. It's a project by itself. It's
Yeah,
like a separate
it
business
is. Yep.
or like separate product,
Yeah.
sort of like you're selling yourself to provide something,
Yeah.
but it takes a lot of work,
It
all the
does.
pitching and all the preparations and
Yeah. Yeah.
like it's a whole thing. So if you want to be a public speaker, just like think of it as a full-time job
One
and don't if you're listening to this.
It is a full-time job, and I think that's what we forget. I mean, even I kind of forgot because
Yeah.
when I was kind of preparing for this opportunity, I'm like, "Well, I've done this so much before, like, it's fine." And then I started thinking about how I wanted to approach the opportunity, and I'm like, "Oh, no, I've gotta change some things up."
Yeah.
And even then, when I started on Saturday morning, like, I'm just gonna make some tweaks to my slides and change some things up. It became a whole new presentation. I'm like,
It took the whole weekend.
yeah, exactly. I'm like, "Oh, okay, I've just created a project now."
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Katrina, before we wrap this up, what is the number one advice you give to our audience when it comes to their personal brand?
You are never too small or too soon to start creating one. So sometimes we think like, "Oh, okay, I'm going to start building out my personal brand next year. Let
Mm,
me figure out how to market my product-based business. Let me figure out some other things, and once I have those things figured out, then I'll work on
yeah,
the personal brand." But I
yeah.
think the personal brand helps with so much of this other stuff. And I think that we underestimate the value of just being ourselves and forming authentic relationships with other people. People buy from
Mhm.
people.
Yes.
So it's never too soon to start taking it seriously.
Amazing. Katrina, where can we find you and how can we work with you?
Yeah, so I'm Katrina at Knockout Directive. So on Instagram, it's at Knockout Directive, knockoutdirective.com. I have a few different personal branding and publicity coaching programs that are perfect for entrepreneurs or founders that are just looking for some more guidance, some help along the way and some strategy. And through my agency, we also offer more done for you services. So if you're a product based business that's looking to have a partner in social media and public relations growth, we can also help you with that, with your founder focused brand.
Perfect. We're going to link to everything in the description of the podcast. Thank you for being a guest. And to all the listeners and viewers, we'll be back next week with a new episode.